Hey everybody, Thomas Love here, Belle, Epoque Realty. I am here today with a special guest. We've got Jac Shacter, the Vice President of Operations for Terrawise Homes. And today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic. It's sort of a perennial topic, but I think we are taking a unique approach to it this time. Everybody always wants to know what upgrades make the most sense for their home. I get the question all the time, what represents sort of the biggest return on investment? It's a common question, and there's lots of articles written about it, and hell, there's books written about it even. But the approach that we're going to take today, I think, is a little bit of, like I said, a little bit of a different angle. And we are going to specifically explore some of the mistakes that people make. What upgrades are least likely to benefit your home from a value perspective. And as a part of that conversation, it's going to be interesting because, you know, some upgrades are going to be personal and they're not really going to be based on an ROI or return on investment. But we'll get into that a little bit as well. It is your home after all. Welcome, Jac.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming. Let's get into it. What are some of the home upgrades that could potentially, from a value standpoint, actually hurt your wallet?
Yeah, so keep in mind, home builder. So I'm thinking less along the lines of trying to put stuff in a house to sell it and more from a appeasing an appraiser perspective.
Okay.
Right. So most of the houses are we call them pre-sales. So someone has come to us and said, we want to build this house on this lot. And then they come into the color room, they pick all of the stuff that they want.
Okay.
So it's less about maybe curb appeal. We certainly get that in specs.
Sure.
But more about what we see on the back end of, you know, houses appraising. So the short answer is that from a color perspective, basically everything you add to the house is not necessarily increased value from an appraiser's perspective.
Okay.
If you think of a comp sheet, you're talking about, you know, size of the lot, location, size of the house, bedrooms, bathrooms. They don't necessarily care that you spent $5,000 on your bathroom tile. They're going to look at it and they're going to go, wow, that's really pretty. I have no idea how to assign value for that, so I won't.
Sure.
But there are a number of things that I see people kind of make these decisions on now or later. You know, it's like, want it in the house, but should I add it now? Should I add it later? And I see people take some missteps there.
Okay.
So, and again, the short answer is anything that is easy to do later makes sense to do later if you don't want to pay for it now.
Sure.
And with all of those things, there's the caveat of, well, if you do it now, you can roll it in with your mortgage. So, you know, this conversation of cash out of pocket.
Sort of a strategic approach.
Yeah. So, so something like fencing. Fencing is a super easy thing to do later.
Okay.
So, as a builder, we generally get a little bit better prices than normal consumers. But there are some things that we either don't get better prices in, or if we do, it's not really it's not a good discount.
Okay.
And right, we're a company,
Sure.
So we have to mark that stuff up on our selling end.
Makes sense.
And there's also just there's a lot of fees that come in with closing costs and commissions and et cetera. And so even if there's a possibility we could mark something up and make no money on it.
Okay.
And or lose money on it.
Wow.
So right, appliances are a big one. Like a fridge, washer, and dryer are not things that are typically included with a house. They fall perfectly in that same category as fencing. Things people often want, but often aren't included with the house, and they could add them. So, you know, you're moving into a house, you want a fridge and washer and dryer.
Sure. Some would say need.
Need, yeah, sorry. I mean, I guess you don't need a washer and dryer,
True.
but you know, if you have a laundry room, you really want one.
Yeah, exactly.
And oftentimes we are getting the same price, sometimes worse.
Okay.
So like a deal with a rebate, something like that, we might not necessarily get. So oftentimes you can find a good deal from Home Depot or Lowe's or scratch and dent. We had a guy a few years back who drove all the way down to, I think, Orlando to like a Samsung
outlet center.
Yeah,
or
I
something?
think it was like a Samsung outlet, and got like a scratch and dent.
Wow.
But anyway, so if you think, let's say you have a $2,000 fridge. We have to mark that up a little bit when we sell it, or we lose money on it.
That's right.
And it's included in your mortgage.
Okay.
So that's great. But it's not necessarily good value. So you might be able to, one, go get that $2,000 fridge for $2,000.
I see.
Right? There's no markup there.
Yeah.
But you also might be able to get a better deal on it. You might be able to go out, oftentimes we're buying things from potentially the same source as you are. Door hardware is a good example of that. We from a lumber yard, it's actually more expensive than if you, like, we use build.com.
Okay, gotcha.
To get our interior door hardware, our door handles.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so that's one I think actually falls on the other end. We had someone, I don't know, sometime last year, who we have, I think, a pretty nice standard. We use a quickset Pismo brush nickel, which is, we used to use Polo, which I thought was awful. And
just in terms of appeal, like the way it looks,
so ugly.
Gotcha.
So another
aesthetically,
yeah. So there's, just from a builder, there's sort of this back and forth in, I want to offer something that is affordable, right? Let people pick and choose what they want to spend their money on. So you start with a lower price house that most people can afford, and let the people that want really, really nice things get those nice things.
Yeah.
But I think from the customer perspective, when that's everything, you start to get this kind of nickel and dime feel. And so, we switched from Polo to Pismo.
Gotcha.
And I might be pronouncing that wrong. But I think they're pretty attractive. We had someone last year that wanted to upgrade, and I think it was like a color choice. I don't remember.
So the hardware throughout the house, all the doorknobs.
Yeah, it might have been going from like brush nickel to black. Black's really, really
Popular.
common.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gold is starting to come in too.
Sure.
And
gold and like brass variations.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's funny. I feel like growing up, that was like, oh,
I know.
that was old. And
Times change, man.
Now it's coming back in. I want to say the upgrade price is like $300 or something.
Okay.
And they're like, we'll just do that afterwards.
Gotcha.
And it's like, okay, but you are spending, I don't know, just pull a number out of the air. Like, let's say you're spending $1,500 as part of purchasing the house on the included hardware. And then you're also paying someone to install that. And then you're right, we're getting that from the same place. So it is getting some markup. But then you are going to take that you've already paid for, and
undo it.
Yeah, either you yourself, or you're gonna have to pay someone to pull all of that hardware off, sell it on Facebook Marketplace or whatever, and then go buy from likely the same source, build.com, the hardware that you wanted, and install that. And that makes zero sense.
Sounds really inefficient and expensive.
Yeah, and it's just. The color process is really overwhelming. And so it can be hard to explain stuff like that to people when you're at this point where you're trying to make all of the decisions for your house today.
Sure.
But going back to like fencing, appliances, if you have the cash out of pocket to do after closing, like, do it.
Yeah.
So fencing, the discount we get, if we gave it a markup just to cover our costs, just so that we are breaking even on it, that is going to be, like the company we use, that's going to be very likely the same price you pay for it if you're doing it afterwards. And so that's just one of those things where it's like, well, fencing is expensive.
Yeah.
So if
it's gotten expensive. It's crazy.
It's crazy. On one of these deep lots in Springfield, you could be spending $10,000 on fencing.
Absolutely.
So it's a question of, do I want to spend that money included in the house, rolled in with the mortgage, or do I want to get a better deal on it by doing it afterwards? And I think that's just a personal choice for everyone.
Sure.
If I had $10,000 to burn on fencing, then I would choose that route.
Gotcha.
Blinds.
Blinds, window coverings.
Blinds, your window coverings. That's another one of those. It's like we don't have a company that does that just because it's so regular for a builder. We certainly could find someone and do it, but it's this back and forth between included in the house,
sure,
or included in the mortgage, really, or a better deal after the fact.
Gotcha.
Now, the flip side of that. Things that you definitely, if you want to do, you should do them when you build. Tile, counters, cabinets. These things that you're, like the door hardware, you're paying to put them in once. You don't want to pay to rip them out and then redo them in a way that you like.
Sure. So is there anything that sort of fits outside of that category? Other things that, may not be as big of a deal to sort of undo? They're not so much of a one-way street?
It depends. Okay. So flooring, I wrote down a short list here. Flooring is one of those that I felt fell in between, depending on the type of flooring you're doing and what you're doing in the house. Okay. So for a long time, stained concrete floors was standard. We've had people that love them, people that don't, people that thought they loved it and lived on it and didn't care for it.
Oh, interesting.
And so, you're talking about stained concrete flooring. That's a super easy thing to cover up. Okay. Like, you are sure you've spent some money you're not getting back, but it's also, you're not having to tear out. Okay. So you don't have that demolition.
Because it's there anyway.
Yeah. Right, the concrete's there. So let's say you start off with the lowest price option where you're not staining it, you're just sealing it. So that's pretty affordable. And if you love it, great. And if you don't, then LVP down the line. Or if you don't have money to spend on it now, if you don't have $10,000 because you want to do wood floors, you could do your stained concrete now. And when you have that money,
you could always do it later.
Yeah, we had someone do something I wouldn't suggest.
Okay.
And that was they had selected carpet for the second floor, which is really typical. And they wanted to do LVP, but they didn't want to spend the money in the color room for it. Okay. They were, and I think this was they were going to do their own labor, which is of course
for the LVP.
For the LVP.
Okay.
The LVP is not a hard thing to install. There's some things that you need to know, but if you know them, it's not terrible.
Probably beyond my expertise, but
I would probably at least take a shot at it.
Yeah.
Do a room and see how it goes.
See how far you get.
And so at some point in construction, this came up, and we said, well, why don't we find out if we can just leave the carpet out? I mean, what happened was I think they were doing a walkthrough, and they're like, well, we're just going to tear the carpet out like the day after closing.
Oh, wow.
And we went, well, let's see if we can just not install that and credit you that money back.
Yeah.
That's just a horrible waste.
Yeah.
And that had to be approved by their lender.
Oh.
And the appraiser. So there's a possibility there that the lender's like, hey, this is not a finished house.
That's right.
And the final inspector, which it wasn't an issue. And I could be wrong. I think the feedback after that was, wow, we wish we had just paid for it to be done. And I think that was more of a labor thing.
It's one of those things of I'll get to it, and
well, I think they got to it right away and just realized it was a bigger task than they expected.
I see.
Which is a hard thing to undertake when you're also in the middle of moving.
Sure.
But I think that falls into sort of it depends on the situation. I've been talking a lot about the new construction side of things.
Sure.
But I don't necessarily see this stuff from the general real estate side. So I'm interested in, like, what do you see customers ask? Like when someone says, I want to look at a house, what do they want to see? So as builder, we're trying to, like with a spec home, something that we are going to pick the colors for. We often try to keep it nice, but also blank slate.
Sure.
So we're trying not to pick polarizing color options.
For sure.
Because, we want to deliver something that someone else can make their own.
Exactly.
But I there's been some discussion on whether that makes sense, because I feel like you see those houses with you're decorated really beautiful, like deep greens and golds, and some people just go wild for that.
That's true.
And so what's it like from the general real estate side, where people are, like, what are people looking for?
And it really does depend on where the house is. I think it really has a huge effect. Different areas of Jacksonville. Jacksonville is incredibly diverse from a neighborhood standpoint. And there are a lot of really distinct neighborhoods here that have really distinctive feels and vibes. So you'll get different preferences for each one, especially when it comes to certain aesthetics like home color, for instance. Some more universal things that I feel that people value nowadays are going to be things that like a house that can accommodate work from home, for instance. That's a very, very common one. That's relatively new, relatively meaning just probably since COVID. Ever since then, I mean, it's had, that particular component has had a weight that we haven't really seen previously before. Another thing that people seem to really respond positively to are really cultivated outdoor areas is something that I'm seeing. You know, and you don't have to go as extreme as like an outdoor kitchen or anything like that, but landscaping and hardscaping are something that I've found from my personal experience that buyers tend to have a really positive reaction to. And it's one of the, you know, back to the sort of the earlier topic of ROI, as a seller, it's probably, that is like outdoor spaces and landscaping are probably one of the heaviest hitting improvements or components that can be offered to buyers, because, you know, people I feel are spending more time at home these days, generally speaking. So cultivated outdoor areas, in addition to a dedicated work from home space, very, very important, I think, generally speaking.
Have you seen with the sort of return to office, the dedicated home working space be less of an issue, or still like something people really look for?
It's still something that people really look for, even people who still have to go to the office. It's really interesting. And people value it from all sorts of different perspectives, even if it's a place for the kids to do homework, for instance. You know, people seem to really appreciate having a space that can be dedicated to some type of work, working from home. So, I mean, there's options. A lot of times when we stage homes, for instance, we will stage one of the bedrooms or some area as our work from home area. That's become pretty common and pretty important.
That's interesting.
Yeah, just to sort of plant that seed in somebody's mind of what's possible, you know. So generally speaking, I think those are two of probably the most sort of salient features that the market has sort of moved towards, you know.
Yeah, less of an upgrade thing and more of just a plan.
Yeah, and it really reflects lifestyle. I mean, because you know, let's get back to basics. I mean, these are homes. This is where people. These are people's abodes. You know, this is where they spend their time. This is where they live their family life. So a lot of times, changes in lifestyle really is what drives these changes from what we've been seeing. So. We just sold a house, I think, in Murray Hill that had a beautiful sort of cultivated garden, an herb garden, and mulberry trees, and it's what sold the house.
Sounds really nice. Something I hadn't correlated, but makes a lot of sense, is since COVID, we have done very few like standard kitchens. They've almost always been our like gourmet kitchen where you've got the double oven, and I'm just you're saying this and I'm thinking, oh, this is from lockdown. This is from people having to be stuck in their kitchens, stuck cooking their food, and going, wow, this kitchen's really dysfunctional.
Standard kitchen didn't cut it anymore.
Yeah, I would like that double oven. I would like the extra. That makes a lot of sense. And
a lot of those changes that some of which, you know, stemmed from COVID, they've just kind of, obviously COVID isn't around like it was, but some of these changes have persisted, you know, and who knows how long they'll persist. But I feel like it was sort of a watershed moment in the direction of housing and especially from the standpoint of just buyer preferences, I think.
That's really interesting. I'm looking back over your bullet points here, and you've got over improvement mistakes, and I'm just thinking about that, and I think we have probably really different perspectives on that.
Okay.
Because from my perspective, building a house for an actual person, this person is picked everything.
Okay.
My concern is not necessarily, like from the general real estate side, it's like, what do I put in the house that's going to have curb appeal, that's going to attract people, that is, if I'm doing a renovation, that's going to get that return. My perspective for all of that is sort of irrelevant.
Sure.
It is appraisal based.
Yeah.
It is like, when you take a $200,000 house and you put $70,000 in options in it, is it going to appraise? Probably not.
I see, yeah.
And for anyone out there, that's really guidance from your builder. If you're adding a ton of stuff, if it's a concern, at some point your builder will have that conversation with you, or should have that conversation with you.
Yeah.
Should go, hey, you have picked $70,000 in tile.
Sure.
That's great. Really love that. It's probably not going to appraise, or there's a concern that it might appraise, and have that conversation about what would happen, in that instance at that point, where there's still time to reselect things. So
that really gets to the crux of sort of what we're talking about in this episode. What you just described essentially are over improvements. So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're sort of saying that certain elements that are highly personalized, maybe aesthetic elements, like you mentioned, tile, for instance, people aren't going to see a return on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can take my personal home for example, because it's a Terrawise, of course.
Of course.
And we super over selected.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's just what happens when you're a builder. You want to build
No
the best
compromise,
house.
damn it.
Yeah, no, right? That's how it is.
Yeah.
And
you have a vision.
That's why it's taken us 5 years to work on this next house.
Yeah, gotcha.
And we had selected a whole bunch of stuff, and it took so long to get pricing. I don't think I even looked at it when I finally got it. I think I just made sure everything was correct and signed off on it.
Okay.
And I think it was like somewhere near completion that I walked in and saw like the tile that my wife had picked for the downstairs bathroom and went, wow, that looks expensive. Beautiful, gorgeous, expensive.
Gotcha.
And I pulled the color sheet up, just a shower, like a 3x3 shower, with tile floor, because on the first floor.
Okay.
And I want to say it was like $6,000 in tile.
Goodness. For one shower.
Don't do that.
Wow.
Don't do that.
You really love that shower.
We actually started removing. We removed the really high level tiles, the like $50 and $100 a square foot tiles from our color room, because they don't have any place in a $500,000 house.
Doesn't really make sense.
House.
Yeah. It's not justifiable.
$1 million house, sure, because you end up in instances like that.
Sure.
And
an over improvement for sure.
Yeah. And it was beautiful. But we did have an appraisal shortfall. I think our total color sheet was something like $70,000. It was one of the biggest color sheets we'd seen.
Sure.
And we did have an appraisal shortfall.
Good job, Jack.
Which I was expecting.
Yeah. So you went in with your eyes wide open.
Yeah, and I don't remember what the shortfall is. It was like $10,000 or $20,000.
Okay.
And we knew that, and it was we're willing to pay for these things.
Yeah.
Which is again part of that conversation. If your builder goes, hey, we think we might have an issue here with these selections. Part of that conversation could be we think it's going to be a shortfall. So if you want these things, we could still do them, but we're going to want that money in escrow, or we're going to want that up front with the understanding that that's to pay for a shortfall if there is one. Or it's hey, let's reselect some stuff.
Yeah. I think that's important. So it's important to parse those two things, like certain improvements or certain options that you select, you have to parse sort of how it's going to play out, right? When it comes time to resale. Is it your forever home? Sometimes things happen. Forever homes become a 5-year home.
Yep.
Regardless, it's important, I think, to go in with your eyes wide open and realize that if you do select some of these extras, these improvements that especially are more aesthetic leaning, that maybe you're not going to get a return on it. And which is cool as long as, like you said, as long as you are aware of it going in and kind of calculate that into your own sort of value system, I think.
Yeah. So on the general real estate side, what are like the over improvements that you see people do when you're I guess it's really more on like the selling side, trying to do a renovation to attract prospective buyers?
Sure. The most common one, honestly, is one that I've been talking about for years. And it's funny because I mentioned the value of outdoor spaces, but sort of the flip side to that, and you may likely agree with me, is the pool.
Pools, yeah.
So the pool. If you want a pool, maybe it makes more sense to buy a house that already has one. If you are going to go through the trouble and expense of installing a pool,
100%. 100% agree. I have a quick story.
It's the cheapest way to get one. It's the cheapest way to get one because they are expensive. It's sort of like fences. Like the cost of a pool seemingly has just skyrocketed in recent years. And I always tell people, you really better like to swim. And you really better use that pool because you are not going to get any of that money back. It's a very polarizing feature. And when it comes time to sell, I feel like you will almost have just as many people who will mark your house off the list because it has a pool as those who want a pool.
Yeah. I mean, when we bought this last house with our appraiser shortfall, we'd outgrown our previous house and realized it too late. And so we were shopping around, and that was one of the things was we do not want a house with a pool. Yeah. We've got little kids.
That's right. Yep.
And it was just something that I don't even want to have to be concerned with.
That's right.
But yeah, it's funny. We had, for whatever it was, 9 years, our model in Springfield was the same house. And I worked that house as our salesperson for several years. And the next door neighbor, which was a house we built and had moved on a couple times, I think, decided to put a pool in. And I want to say they spent like $50,000 on a pool. Yeah. It was, I think it was one of the like fiberglass ones with a liner. So it wasn't like a really fancy pool. Sure. And is on a standard Springfield lot. So they had their backyard essentially was porch, pool, parking. And so they spent $50,000 on it, something like that. Yeah. Something like $50,000. And then pretty shortly thereafter, I want to say like 6 months or something, less than a year, they ended up reselling that house. Okay. And we actually saw not only them not get the $50,000 for the pool, but actually sell for about $50,000 less than we would have expected it. Goodness. Given that it's one of our plans and I know what's in it and I know what they go for. Yeah. So they added this, they spent money to detract value from the house. And I just thought that was, again, if you were going to be there for 5 or 10 years, and it's possibly, hopefully, something that they had a discussion on and made the decision that, having the pool was worth it for us. But yeah, I can see that being a big misstep.
Yeah, and I have a specific example myself. I sold a house not too terribly long ago that had a pool. The seller had paid $75,000 for the pool, and the appraiser assigned it a value of $3,500.
Ouch! We've seen those. Not to get too far off subject, but we had in what was it, 2021, I think. We put solar on a house. I want to say it was like $12,000 worth of solar, and we had an appraiser shortfall for the value of the solar. Everything else was fine. Okay. And the appraiser essentially said, I don't know how to give value for the solar. I don't know what the value should be, so I'm going to give you nothing.
Interesting.
And so we had all these conversations. We had cost-benefit analysis, expected savings versus cost, and all of that stuff. And he took it to, I guess, his supervisor. And his supervisor said, as a company, we do not currently have a policy on how we should assess solar, so no value. Wow. Yeah. And
that's smarts.
Yeah, it was just like, that's crazy. Yeah. But it happens.
It happens. That's unfortunate. We don't know how to do it, so we don't.
Yeah,
essentially.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. They don't want to overvalue it, but it's worth something. To say we're just going to do nothing.
Yeah,
was the crazy part to me.
That's insane. That's insane. All right, so let's talk about smart homes.
Okay, I'm a big smart home lover. I have a home assistant server. I have a server rack in my house.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
The real deal.
I run Unify UDM Pro. The capability of, I think I can do up to 10 gig into the house,
Goodness.
which I don't,
Yeah.
because I know there's no need to pay for that. I actually have 2.5 gig switches, bringing the internet from where it comes into the house actually to the server rack.
Wow.
It's
a lot of power.
It's a pain in the ass. So there's a home assistant is sort of like the DIY.
Okay.
And it's awesome if you love to tinker.
Okay.
Because it's going to break all the time.
I
There
understand.
are other ways, there are other ways to do it that are much more user friendly. But yeah, it's really like, I can't tell you the number of times setting it up that my wife and kids were like, "Where is the internet?
Oh, wow.
This is not work."
Gotcha. So it's safe to assume that this is an example of overkill. Generally.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Just to make that clear to everybody.
We right, and this house was sort of the test bed for the next one. So
Yeah.
I was willing to sort of screw some things up.
Okay.
So one of them was the bath fans in our master. Tried to automate those.
Okay.
The humidity sensing switches, those things just suck.
Yeah.
Because the problem is their location is at the wall, at a normal light switch level, and you really want that sensor up near the ceiling.
That makes sense.
Yep. And so like we've tried those, and oftentimes they don't even trigger until you're finished with your shower and you open the door, and all of that steam rolls out into the room.
Yeah.
And so we put a multi-sensor on the ceiling, and just as a quick example, I was trying to use it to also control the lights.
Gotcha.
Where the was supposed to work in that the lights would dim for like 30 seconds to signify that, because there's no motion in the room, to signify that like, hey, we're going to turn off. And then if it detected motion, it would go, oh, never mind, back to full brightness.
Gotcha.
The number of times that my wife was like, Jack, the lights turned off on me in the shower again.
Oh, that would be.
Yeah, because it's like the shower glass
fun.
blocks the motion detection.
I see.
And
Showering in the dark.
yeah, so it now no longer turns the lights off, but I can use it to turn them on, which is nice. But to our actual subject of discussion, which is whether you should do it along with the house or afterwards.
Yeah.
I think to some degree it depends on your confidence in things like doing some wiring yourself, like swapping a switch.
Okay.
But the reality is, don't do that. Don't do that with the house. Absolutely do it afterwards.
Okay.
So we have, over the years, many times discussed a smart home package because it's awesome and the stuff is expensive, and I can totally see someone willing to pay $5,000 to just have it be done and have it included with the house.
But you do not offer that currently.
We don't offer that currently. I would like
Maybe
to.
on the horizon.
It's one of those things I'd like to, but again, I don't recommend.
Yeah.
It's kind of like ceiling fans.
Sure.
Like we technically offer ceiling fans, but we only see generally elderly people who aren't interested in hiring a handyman or doing it themselves.
Okay.
Able-bodied people are like, like why would you pay an electrician $50 to hang your ceiling fan when you can do it yourself?
Gotcha. I've hung all of mine.
It's a great example of additive things, right?
Yeah.
So like a fence, if you can pay for it afterwards or you can do it yourself, it's oftentimes just makes more sense to do that.
Gotcha.
Especially for inexpensive items.
Sure.
Fencing, fridge, those are high dollar figure. But when you're talking about a ceiling fan,
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
yeah. But for example, the switches, I want to say a typical smart home switch like a Lutron Caseta is usually about $60 a switch.
Okay.
And this was a couple years ago. We talked about this with our low voltage company, which is awesome. But to have their electrician install them and do the setup was like I think $60 a switch. So our cost is $120 a switch, and then it's going to need some markup on it. And so do you really want to pay that?
Yeah.
For something that you could buy for $60 at the store.
Sure.
And spend 10 minutes installing.
Gotcha.
And it's just,
It's one of those things.
I don't think it makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of cool stuff. For us as a builder, the hard part is the servicing.
Okay.
So when you get to smart home stuff breaks, updates happen. You can't even, for the most part, set those things up until you have internet. And we're just like not set up for that.
Gotcha.
So our low voltage company does offer that stuff, and they do white glove service. So they actually come back after you have internet anyway to set up your alarm system.
I see.
Because you do get 1 year alarm.com included, and so like they can do that for you, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But I just don't think it makes sense.
Gotcha. The smart home options. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot more options as time goes on. I spend a little bit of time in that aisle at Best Buy.
Yeah.
Looking at all this. A lot of it's plug and play, some of it even.
Yeah, I mean our model, our current model is decked out with all smart switches, which is great. Like in the morning, you ask, I won't say the keyword to key off our viewers' phones, listeners' phones, but you ask your assistant of choice.
Exactly.
Like good morning, and
starts a routine.
It turns all the lights on the model, which is something you normally have to walk through and turn them all on.
Yep.
And oh, here's what's on your schedule for today. Here's a joke. Here's the temperature. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's great. And then same thing when you're leaving, you're just like, hey, good night, or your good night routine, or turn off the lights. And likewise, like the lights on, the exterior lights, they turn on at sundown and they turn off at midnight, and no one even has to be there.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and there's something I do have to say, just at smart home enthusiast.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do smart switches, try a couple to see if you like it, and then if you do, you really have to take it all the way, because there is nothing worse than like sitting down on your couch to watch a movie and be like, hey, turn off the lights, and then go, oh, that one light that's not on the smart switch, it's still on.
Oh, that would be infuriating.
Then you still have to get up and turn it off. You're like, I spent all this money on this.
Yeah, that would be infuriating. That would mess with my mind.
But like, there's cool things. We have a Plex home media server. I'm also a big proponent of physical media, owning your movies so that people can't take them away from you.
Gotcha.
And
you mean like a DVD, or something on not a DVD, you know what I'm saying, like a hard drive or something?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we have, gosh, I forget, 37 terabytes worth of storage in our home server, and it's about half full of movies.
Gotcha.
So I rip them and put them on there, and then you keep the physical disc. That's sort of the legal gray area.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to rip them, but I do still physically own it.
That's right.
So it's like not really piracy.
I gotcha.
So it's like you sit down and watch a movie, and you press play, and if the lights are on, I have them set to dim.
Yeah.
And then when you pause the movie, they'll come back up.
That's awesome.
Likewise, if it's during the day, you can have the blinds closed, so you have a darker room. There's all sorts of super cool stuff you can do.
You are definitely a smart home aficionado.
There's so much more I want to do. It's really all about time to tinker.
Well, it's kind of like a bottomless well, right?
Oh,
and
100%.
I don't mean that in a negative way.
We have
you can go
chickens.
As deep as you want.
We have chickens.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I have an outdoor air temperature sensor, and if it gets too cold, it turns the heat lamp on for them.
That's pretty cool.
Our AC scheduling is actually set based upon the outdoor temperature. So something I hate about smart thermostats, because I like a really, really skinny range of temperatures. I want my house to be comfortable. And in most heat cool modes, it's a range.
Gotcha.
And it's usually like 3 or 4 degrees. And I want it at where I want it.
Oh, wow. You want it fewer than 3 or 4 degrees.
I want it like at 70 all the time.
I see.
And so the problem is in like a heat cool mode, you have this range
that you can't. That's our minimum range.
You can't push it between, right? So that's nice, because if you need heating, it'll turn on heating. If it needs cooling, it'll turn on cooling. But if you want a specific temperature, you have to manually say, I want this in cool mode.
That's right.
Or manually say, I want this in heat mode. And so what we have is an outdoor air temperature that'll say, hey, it's this temperature out, and Home Assistant will go, hey, thermostat, you should be in cool mode.
Interesting.
hey, you should be in heat mode.
So kind of a workaround.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And there are other like not home assistant that are way more plug and play.
Yeah.
But this pretty off tangent. We should do a whole episode on my smart home failures.
Oh, I'm down to learn more about it for sure, because I'm thinking about making my house a little smarter. So
Dakota can come in and
give the breakdown.
Yeah, go. How many? This many times the light turned off in the shower, and this many times the internet broke, and this many times he came to bed at 2 a.m. because he broke the internet and then had to figure out how to fix it.
A unique perspective from Dakota. That's awesome.
On that, we were talking about landscaping and smart home.
Yes.
And I have to say that one of the I feel like biggest impact things we did that would just cost like, in the grand scheme of a house, basically no money, was landscape lighting.
Oh yeah. Just highly recommended.
Oh my God. We did a landscape lighting outlet.
Yep.
And I actually, that ended up being a real pain, smart homifying
okay.
that.
Gotcha.
Because landscape transformers are not really designed for that.
I see.
I have mine set in test mode.
Oh, wow.
So that a smart switch can control it.
Another workaround.
But yeah, I mean, it's just, the cost of the circuit is essentially just a weatherproof outlet. And then you bring a landscape transformer. The low voltage transformers are definitely my recommendation.
Yep.
You just have a low voltage line that runs through your yard, and the lights just kind of they clamp onto it, and they have little things that pierce the wire.
Yep.
Get their power, and it just adds so much to the house.
I agree. I am a strong proponent of landscape lighting. I think everybody should do it.
We moved into our current house at the end of 2022, and so COVID was still kind of a thing, and a lot of delivery, a lot of dinner being delivered.
Yeah.
And like just address numbers.
Sure.
Just address numbers, or like in the delivery notes, like, hey, we're the purple house with the pink door, or with the black door.
Yeah.
And there's no lights on. That's super hard to see.
For sure, especially those colors.
Yeah. The like addresses.
Uh-huh.
Of course, there's a code for how big they're supposed to be and where they're supposed to be. No one follows. But
at all.
No. But you have sort of this back and forth, I feel like, in Springfield with the way our houses are designed, where you can either have it kind of by the front door, where it's going to be lit by your porch lights.
Yep.
But can be hard to be visible from the street.
Yep.
Or common places on a column. And that's
a lot of people have them on the porch. Yep.
super visible from the street. But then if you don't have landscape lighting,
it's
at night,
invisible.
you don't see it at all.
Exactly.
And I just think that is like I try to talk people into it, and people, I think, just tend to be like, I have no idea what you are even going on about.
To those of you who are graciously listening to us and watching us, please opt for landscape lighting.
Yeah, it's.
You will not regret it.
It
will elevate your home.
It was one of those things where I added it, and I went, I should have done this on the back. I should have added an extra outlet for the back porch.
Yeah.
For the for our string lights. And
we're
stuff
kind of
back
working
there.
on that now.
Yeah.
It's we had my wife and I, we had our yard landscaped like almost 2 years ago, and we opted for really nice landscape lighting, and we're definitely on the track to expand it for sure. Fell in love with it. Loved it more than I ever thought possible. So highly recommend it. Thumbs up from Thomas Love.
Yeah. I did string lights. We have like a tree in one corner of our backyard. So I ran, I forget, it's like 200 foot of string lights from the house, just kind of back and forth in this fan pattern.
Okay.
And it just like lights up the whole backyard at night in this nice, soft, warm glow. Go out to check on the chickens or park the car, plug in.
Just makes your home homier.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's super nice that is just a switch or a smart home assistant request away.
For sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. These are all really good topics. Okay, so I want to talk about what makes the most sense to have done to your home earlier rather than later, at the building stage, for instance, when it comes to a Terrawise home specifically.
So I always say infrastructure is the name of the game in new construction. That's adding outlets, adding lights, adding low voltage. Like me, here's the line for the server rack. But I feel like Terrawise really embodies that. We're trying to build a really well-built house. We go above and beyond trying to be quality with our materials and our workmanship.
Yep.
But the energy efficiency. So, these
Energy efficiency is huge with you guys.
Yeah, I mean that's what we do.
That's the deal. Yeah.
That's our whole shtick.
Yeah.
So it's like you live in a historic home, and so if you wanted to make that energy efficient, super airtight, that would be incredibly expensive, and it would be incredibly hard to do.
Yeah.
And of course, you have that old home charm that a new house will never have.
Yeah.
But when you're comparing new construction to new construction, it makes no sense to not spend the extra little bit of time and money on better building and energy efficiency.
Yeah, because like you said, to your point, you can't really easily retrofit those items later.
Right. It's super, it's going to be expensive if you want to open all your exterior walls up and add different insulation in.
Yeah.
You've already paid for an AC system, so do you really want to rip that one out for a really efficient one?
Sure.
And you could wait until that one dies.
Yeah.
Water heater, windows, lighting. There's so much that goes into energy efficient construction, and we could be here for hours talking about that.
Gotcha.
But I just think, when you're talking about new construction, that stuff is really the name of the game. The fencing. I mean, everyone wants a fenced yard.
Yeah.
Smart home stuff. Like
you can always add that stuff.
That is easy stuff to do later, but it just falls really nicely into that, like, if I'm spending money on countertops, let's spend a little bit more on what I want. That's an upgrade I should do. Now, that's not something I should tear out and do.
And redo.
Energy efficiency just falls really nicely into that same discussion of you're building the house from nothing, from absolutely nothing. Spend the extra money on doing it the right way.
Yeah. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, these components, these high energy efficiency components are integral to the house. So coming back at some later time, trying to add those elements, it's not really feasible.
Yeah. Well, and even beyond the energy efficient, just like quality construction. So I don't know if you've seen like the really inexpensive production houses in Texas. With the cardboard sheathing.
Oh, I haven't heard. I think maybe I have heard of that.
If you there's
now that you mention
some Instagram private home inspectors in Texas. You'll see them.
Cardboard sheathing. You say
cardboard. So it's like I want to say it's like a plastic film faced sheathing. So it's like waterproof. But yeah, I mean that's literally your sheathing. Wow. And so I joke that when you take that and then you put like vinyl lap siding over it, that it is actually easier to break into someone's house through the wall than through the door.
Oh my gosh.
But that I see it and now there's something to be said for being able to build something at a price point that people can afford that they otherwise wouldn't be able to. There is an absolute time and place for that product.
Sure.
But if you can afford it, why would you not build better?
Gotcha. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Absolutely. Very, very good.
I'm going to have to find one of those videos to show you.
I want to see
It's crazy. It's really crazy.
I've been following some of those Instagram profiles of some certain home inspectors. Are pretty entertaining. Some of the stuff that they see.
Oh, yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And just, home builder, I always recommend you get a home inspection. It is worth the peace of mind, if nothing else.
Absolutely.
We tend to have pretty clean reports.
Yeah.
And I think that is just, again, peace of mind.
Yep.
And if not, then you know what needs fixing.
Yeah. At Epoque Realty, we always take the standpoint that it's money well spent. Home inspections, for sure. Absolutely. Peace of mind, like you said. It's worth something.
I mean, you're buying how many hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of house?
Exactly. The biggest purchase that most people make in their lives.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay, guys, thank you for tuning in. It sounds like that's another episode of our podcast. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, for listening, and for watching, those of you on YouTube. I also want to thank Jac Shacter, the Vice President of Operations for Terrawise Home, for his time.
Thank you for having me.
And graciously providing his insights. I think it's a very important topic. For those of you on YouTube, we'll have more information about Terrawise Homes in the comments and all of the appropriate contact information. Thank you guys again for tuning in, and we will see you on the next one. Take care.